Restore Hope was started in 2015 by the governor, and it was in direct response to the twin crises of incarceration and the resulting numbers, the increasing numbers of their children coming into foster care. And I had been in direct service and grant making for a number of years, and so I knew that the issues that our clients were facing were quite complex. In fact, we did an analysis on the 100 families Sebastian County client list, and here are some of the demographics. $12,000 or less year prior to us meeting them. 3 areas of significant crisis. Substance abuse issues, outstanding legal issues, and this is the thing that I saw when we were in direct service doing educational programs and help programs. I was constantly frustrated because we would measure in our silo, and what I began to realize was a silo. We had to measure what we could control, which if you look at holistically at a community, right, is just an input. It's one of the things. We envision it really as, if you can think of me, right, and my goal is to get me when I'm born, you want to get me into orbit. The more areas of crisis that I'm in, the more fuel has to go into the rocket to be able to lift me up. And so when I was in direct service, we were involved in some housing. And so if someone was homeless, housing fixed their problem, right? It fixed a problem that they had. But that's not enough fuel to actually get the individual that's having problems with housing into orbit. And so we would do real well there, but in the story, the rocket would come crashing back down for transportation or recovery or whatever that individual needed. And so I was constantly frustrated. And so we started doing some research about, did other communities, have there been any communities that have actually tried and had population level outcomes? And there were. It's unicorn rare. I think it's becoming, with sharing of information, it's starting to become more common. But it's still very, very rare to have population level outcomes, to actually change systems. Do you know why? Because there's part of it that's a science. You can go get the Stanford Innovation Review article right now and get the science down. In fact, the students, I'd recommend you do that. And Dr. Riley will give you an A on your paper. But just knowing the science behind it won't get you there. And the reason is there's an art part of this also. There's an individual will of us in the community that have to want to push through or outside of our own boundaries and be able to work with each other. And you're not necessarily, your incentive structures, whatever they are for your agency, nonprofit, or business, the rewards may not be there for you. And that is largely, that and personalities are the things that prevent us from actually changing the structure. And the target clients that we all serve here in this room and that we want to serve more, the reality is that their reality will not change unless we work together. That's the art part. That's the will part. And so when we launched this in 2016, we came to Sebastian County trying to assemble the first, it's called collective impact or systems approach, that would address incarceration, child welfare, and even prevention for incarceration. And time after time, I can remember this one story I tell about Charlotte all the time. I was staying downtown in the hotel. We were having all these meetings trying to put the first program together. And Charlotte called me one evening and she said, I just saw that our foster care numbers in Sebastian County just topped 700 children in foster care. At the same time period, Little Rock, about 3 times the size of Sebastian, had 500 kids in care. And she said, I'm done talking. We've got to do something. And I don't even care if we fail, but if we fail, at least we'll be sweating as we fail. No more talk. Time to stop flapping your gums, Mr. Chapman, is what I heard. And the outcomes. And there were key leaders. Cam was at the probation parole office. Kevin Murphy was leading ACC at the time. Key members of the community, the sheriff, police chief, started coming together saying, we may be hitting marks for our individual silos, but we're missing the mark as the type of community that we all want to live in. And our fates are tied together. What impacts one indirectly or directly impacts all of us indirectly. And I first realized that when I was in a Chamber of Commerce meeting about 3 years ago. It was not in Crawford or Sebastian, it was another city. And the number one issue that the president of that chamber was dealing with, and he felt like he didn't have any power to deal with, was crime. All the businesses there were calling and demanding that the chamber do something about crime because they couldn't win the contract, they couldn't get the types of employees that they wanted to stay or move in. And so it was impacting economics. So not only is it the type of community that we want to live in that would help me, I want to live in a community that if my chips, I'm down in the hole and I'm out of chips, that the help would be offered to me. And if I wanted the help, that the path would be clear. And the only thing in between me and success and thriving would be my choices. That's the type of community that I know many of you want. And so the science is clear in collective impact, the 100 Families Initiative, is there are some things that must exist. We must have a group of community members that have influence that will agree that they're going to work together. They're going to share data, that they're going to spend some of their finite time here on this earth trying to solve and innovate the next problem. And it's through innovations, like I'm looking at Judge Baker and Dr. Debbie Faubus here. You heard Andrea Lee, the Auditor of State. She talked about a gentleman named Chet Waters. Y'all help Chet Waters. You don't even know him. He doesn't live here. He lives in Searcy. There was an article that was written about him. Chet Waters was met in an alternative sentencing program, Judge Derek's court out of White County, that came from y'all's innovation of creating an alternative sentencing program right here. So Chet Waters has children and a wife and has now created his own business and is struggling every day to remain sober. But he was given the help that he talked about in that article because of what happened right here in Van Buren and what y'all did. And that is the dream, really, of 100 Families, is that the community would come together with the agencies and we would work together to provide help and a clear path for individuals who are in crisis in our communities so that they can take care of their kids and that they can get an education and they can go make some money and they can pursue happiness along with the rest of us. And that as the innovation in the communities happen, they can, just like that, they can be shared with the other 100 Families programs so that we as Arkansans can build the type of state that we all want to live in. That's the dream. And I think it's happening here in Crawford County because we just launched, or we're fixing to sign a declaration of participation, and 54 families are already onboarded. And so I am proud and honored to be with you here today to celebrate the signing of the Declaration of Participation to help 100 families move from crisis to career. And as soon as we do that, to reload and do it again. So thank you all for having me. I'm quite honored to be with you here this morning.